friends, and welcome back to Favorites video. Today we are going to talk about all the stuff I've been loving in the month of September. I have 3 decks, 3 books, and a bunch of other stuff to share with you. So let's get straight to it. I have been spending some good quality time with an old favorite this month. It's the Gill Tarot. I've done a couple of readings with this baby, and if you've been following me for a while, you will know that this is one of my all-time favorite decks. I've called it a soul deck at different points. It's just a very special deck to me. My box is yellow because I do have the first edition before it went out of print. Since it's come back in print, I think the box is blue, so that's why it looks a little different. But the cards themselves, I think, are pretty much the same, and this is just such a gem of a deck. For me, this is a very personal, intuitive experience with this deck. I've never read for anybody else with the Gill Tarot, and I don't think I ever will. I've never quite been able to put my finger on why this deck means so much to me, or why it reads so well for me, or why it means so much to me. And try as I might, I don't think I'm ever going to really get there. All I can say is that the colors and the imagery and the simplicity and just the choices that are made in these cards, it just makes sense to me. And so when I pull out a spread of 3 or 5 cards, it just speaks to me. It just makes sense. It speaks right to my soul. And there's something so special about having an experience like that with a deck, and it's one I just truly treasure. So I have done a couple of readings with this deck this month, a couple of readings around some more like high anxiety provoking situations, which is why I wanted to pull out, you know, my old best mate, because the Gill Tarot, it just works in a way that is like honest and true and direct, but also still quite compassionate, and it doesn't ever like indulge my anxiety and that sort of stuff. So I always really love the Gill Tarot, and I always have just such fabulous readings with it, and it's just so colorful. It's always such a joy to pull out these cards. I love them. I have done a review and like a walkthrough of the Gill Tarot, so I will leave a link in the description and the cards above if you'd like to see more of these lovely cards. Next is a deck I've spoken about so much, like constantly ever since I got it, I swear. It's the Sasuraibito Tarot. Done a couple of readings with this baby lately. I also pulled it out to do the B-roll for my decision-making spread video. So whenever I pull this deck out, I can't put it back away. I won't talk about this deck too much because I feel like I speak about it all the time. I show it off all the time. Honestly, I think this is one of my most used decks ever. It's just such an easy deck to work with, and it's also so pretty. For me, this is just another one of those decks that just speaks so clearly and directly. Whenever I do readings, I'm not kind of sitting there trying to figure out what the cards are trying to tell me. The imagery and like the system of tarot just come through so easily for me. It's just really accessible. And I guess that's why it's just such a joy for me to work with, and I love it, and that's why I keep going back to it time and time again. This is another one that I've got like a full video about, so I will stop there, and if you want to know more about it, you can check that video out. Next up is a deck I don't think I've really spoken about much on this channel, and I'm thinking about doing a video on this deck, so let me know if you'd be interested. And it is the Dialectical Behavioral Therapy Skills card deck. 52 practices to balance your emotions every day. So I've mentioned before that DBT was a therapy sort of program that I participated in. I think it was 2014, 2015, which is a pretty comprehensive therapy system. It was like a whole year program to go through, and I really think it changed my life and saved my life potentially. DBT is incredible. It is kind of rooted in CBT, but goes above and beyond. And it is split into 4 kind of core skill sets. There's interpersonal effectiveness, mindfulness, distress tolerance, and emotional regulation. And this deck is split up into those 4 key skill sets and sort of breaks down all of these skills and behaviors that you learn within DBT. So this is just such a great deck, and it's been really helpful for me lately in reminding myself of all of these skills that I have developed and learnt over the years, that sometimes, you know, if I haven't been using them for a little while, I might forget about them. And they're the sort of skills that you want to be well practiced in, so that when you need them, you can access them. Basically, you don't want to be learning how to deal with distressing emotions when you're having distressing emotions. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use decks like this. At the moment, I've just been kind of like picking a card to work with each day, and so just selecting a skill that I want to find an opportunity to practice during the day, just to get reacquainted with these skills that I spent a lot of time and effort learning and that have been so beneficial to me. So this is just a really cool deck, and I love DBT and I'm really enjoying this deck. Now onto the books. The first book I want to talk about I actually listened to. It was an audiobook that I got through Libro FM's ALC program, and it was The Death of Avec Ogie by Akwaeke Emezi. I loved. I gave this a solid 5 stars. I actually took my time listening to it because it is It's pretty heavy. It deals with some pretty heavy emotional topics. It is a story of two boys, and we follow them as they grow up. They are cousins living in Nigeria. There's Vivek and his cousin Osita. And obviously it's not a spoiler. It's not even just at the beginning of the book. It's literally the title. Quite early on we find out that Vivek dies, but we don't know who did it or how it happened or why. And so this book is essentially, you know, the story leading up until Vivek's death. And so we are learning more about his childhood and his relationship with Osita, and sort of how they grow up, how they grow apart, their relationship, and also of Vivek exploring both his sexual and gender identities. And I don't want to talk too much about this because I will be talking about these books more thoroughly in a wrap-up over on my BookTube channel next week. But I will just say that this story was so compelling. The characters, Emezi has such an incredible way of putting characters together where they feel so real, and their relationships and their connections feel so real. And the writing is just, it's so fresh to me, but just really beautiful. The other big 5-star book for me this month was This Is Not a Border. This is Reportage and Reflection from the Palestinian Festival of Literature. It is an anthology. And my friend Sonia recommended this to me a couple of years ago, and I finally got around to reading it. And basically this is a collection of stories and essays and poems from people who have participated in the festival. So it is Palestine and the situation in Palestine, spoken about from lots of different perspectives. Some people are Palestinian, whether that is like they were born in Palestine or they are, you know, first, second, third generation immigrants in other countries. There was quite a few people who contributed who were from South Africa, and the comparisons they draw between apartheid in South Africa and what's happening in Palestine at the moment. I only finished this last night, so I'm still very much processing my thoughts and my feelings, and obviously this is a favorites video, not a review or even a reading wrap-up. I will talk more about this book over on my book channel. But for now, suffice to say that if you feel like you don't know anything about Palestine or you don't know enough, and you want to, this is a great place to start. If anthologies about different countries and different experiences, particularly ones where, you know, there's a lot of sort of veiled discussion that isn't always very clear in media, it just offered a lot. It just made me feel so many different emotions, and also started up some conversations with Blair and I just think this book is a wonderful collection, and it's really well put together. Even just the way the book feels is beautiful. And then my favorite book from my Wild Book Box reading adventure this month was Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine Evaristo. Now this won the Booker Prize. It tied with Margaret Atwood last year, which was kind of very newsworthy. And it was my first Bernadine Evaristo book that I've ever read. I really loved it. It is basically the story of 12 different people, mostly women, mostly black, in the UK, and it covers quite a big time span, so there's a few different generations in here, and just really different experiences, from the immigrant experience to the second or third generation immigrant experience to the adoptee experience. Also a lot of discussion of sexual and gender identity as well, and just so many different intersecting identities represented by 12 people in 12 chapters. And even though like the 12 chapters are pretty distinct, they feel sort of like character profiles. All of these people are connected in some way, and we sort of, some of those connections are very obvious right at the beginning. Other connections we only sort of see come to fruition at the end of the book. The language in here is beautiful. It's written quite, like the style is pretty specific, but I just could not put this down. It's a pretty chunky book, and I read it in a weekend. So this was a 4.5 star for me. I loved it. And now for the content and other stuff. The first thing I wanted to talk about was a series, I guess, that Y has been doing mostly on his channel, on the Cusp Tarot, with Annika, Lucy, and the Tiger's Abyss, Zach. They've been doing like live chats with the 4 of them, talking about different topics in the tarot community. A lot of the time they've kind of focused on or incorporated in some way the discussion of diversity. It's a series that I've like been keeping my eye on, but only this month have kind of taken some time to watch, because obviously being live chats, they are longer. So I think I've watched 3 now, and they're really good. The four of them all have such different perspectives and different lived experiences that they bring to the table, and they are all more than willing to go in on some very interesting, often slightly hot button topics. And I just love it. I love the discussions that they have. I love how open they all are, and they like kind of go back and forth. They very often agree, they sometimes disagree. It's just like a really lively discussion between a bunch of people who clearly get along and really respect each other, but are also the sort of people who are okay not agreeing with everything. They seek to understand each other, but not necessarily to agree with each other. And I just think that that is such a great foundation to come at these sort of discussions from. And they're really fun. I'm really enjoying them. So like I said, it's not so much one video that I'm recommending, but like a whole series that they've got going on. So I will leave a link to the playlist if I can find it. And I definitely recommend. Then Will from Atypical Tarot recently did a video on the Eight of Wands. Will has this series where he often will talk about just one card from the tarot, and he uses different imagery from different decks to discuss different ideas that these cards can bring up and how they represent those ideas. It's just a really good series, but I loved this one in particular, and it stood out to me because I recently did a reading not too long ago about whether I should start a new channel, and I did share that reading that I did in my decision making spread video last week, which I will leave a link to if you didn't see it. And in that video I spoke about how the Eight of Wands was a pretty significant card in that reading, and so when Will's video popped up, I just really loved hearing him talk about I don't know, seeing that the Eight of Wands in a slightly different way to how I've seen it before, and exploring so many different layers of it and different symbolism in different decks. So I always enjoy those videos from Will, but this one in particular stood out to me because of like a reading I'd recently done, and I love that. And then a video from one of the people in this community that is not really related to tarot specifically, but I 100% wanted to recommend to you to watch because it was so emotionally impactful for me. It made me cry, and that was Laura from Aquamarine18 did a video on Bisexual Visibility Day. Now, if you don't know, I'm bisexual. I've identified as bisexual since I was about 15, I think, and like been out with that. But as I've been in a monogamous relationship with Blair for more than 10 years now, I very much feel like my identity as a bisexual person has been erased. And for a long time, I think I did that to myself, which sucks. It sucks. And I think bisexuality is definitely that's a thing that I think a lot of people experience, of either we're too gay or we're not gay enough. It just isn't always seen or appreciated as a legitimate experience and identity. And so then some of us internalize that bullshit. And I love the way Laura spoke specifically to that, but then she also discussed the idea of Bi-Visibility Day and sort of the aims of it, and how that could potentially, I don't know, maybe isn't always the most helpful way to go about things. And the way she spoke about it, definitely, it reminded me of another day we've had recently, which is Suicide Awareness Day. And how the focus for these days very often falls on a requirement for people with that lived experience to identify themselves, to make us more vulnerable. Almost in an effort to convince the wider public that we're here and that we count, as opposed to more a challenge of the systems and the ideas that make us invisible. Basically, that the problem is not with bi people, that we're somehow inherently less visible. The problem is with the society. Anyway, Laura's video was amazing. She's always very well spoken and presents ideas in a way that's very clear, and I think that's wonderful. But then also, just on a personal note, I cried the whole way through just because I felt like she was saying, I see you, you count, you matter. Thank you, Laura. That was a fabulous video. Then this is a fun little thing that I wanted to share with you, just in case, you love nature and you're locked inside like I am at the moment, still in lockdown in Melbourne. Phillip Island Nature Parks here in Victoria have been live streaming the fairy penguin parade every weeknight, I think. Basically, the little penguins, or the fairy penguins, whatever you like to call them, they're the smallest penguins, I think, in the world. But anyway, there's a large colony and population of them down on Phillip Island in Victoria. And every night, at sunset or whatever, they come home and make their waddly little way up to where they sleep at night. And they've been live streaming that, all these little penguins shuffling along. And It's some wholesome, adorable content, and some of the park rangers or people who like work there, they're also on the live stream and they like answer questions and stuff. I think it is kind of directed at children, like the sort of questions they're answering, the way that they're talking. But I mean, I've learnt some fun little facts about fairy penguins, and also they're just so flippin' cute. It's just really fun. It's really fun and really cute. So if you need a bit of like an uplifting, adorable animal moment in your life today, then definitely check out them, because they're doing live streaming every weeknight at the moment, and it's so good. My other favorite thing that I just had to share with you is that it is my birthday tomorrow. As of when I'm filming this, it will be in the past when this video goes up. But even though I'm having my birthday in lockdown, I'm turning 30 in lockdown. I can't even have like my parents around for dinner or anything. So it's just me and Blair tomorrow, because I'm a little bit upset about not being able to have like a proper birthday. Blair has still gotten me a proper cake from our favorite cake lady here in Footscray, Mrs. Trishy. And I don't know if you remember, but I think in 2018 for my 28th birthday, Blair got me from Mrs. Trishy a TARDIS cake. I put it up on Instagram. I was obsessed with it. It made all of our tongues blue. It was great. Well, this year he's gotten me a cake, and I don't know what it is yet, but I know it's going to be amazing because it's Mrs. Trishy and it's going to be a really cool cake. I know it is. So I'm telling you it's a favorite, even though I don't know what it is yet, but I will include a picture of it. I'm so excited. Of course, the other thing that is always a favorite of mine during favorites video and any other time is my patrons over on Patreon for all of their very kind, very generous support. Thank you so much. And especially thank you to Tracy Timmerman, Laurie Lynette Brown, and the Hales K. If you would like to come hang out and have our monthly live chat and our book club and our Discord server, then you can check out the Patreon in the description box below. It's a sliding scale, so you can suit a payment level that suits you and your situation. Of course, we would love to have you, but no pressure if that's not your thing. Just thought I'd let you know. And I think that's all. I think that's all I've got. But that's enough from me. I will talk to you all in the comments below and in the next video. And until then, so much love. Bye.